just want to make a quick disclaimer. In this video, I'm going to show you a lot of pictures, images, books, notebooks, and the main book that I'm using, the Tazando, is something that I've organized myself. In no way do I have any ancient Japanese scrolls, or am I saying that these scrolls are accurate to the letter and to the T. This is information that I've collected from different organizations, from different teachers, different grandmasters over a period of 35 years. So this information is going to be something I've collaborated myself. Pictures that I've got off the internet, pictures I've gotten from books, material I've gotten from books, and I've just organized this information to the best of my ability. Most of the material from the Ruhas have come directly from one of the three grandmasters, either from the Bujinkan, the Genbukan, or the Jininkan, and this material has been organized into one book. So it's not an actual physical scroll that's been English translated, that I have letter by letter, T by T, exactly in the correct order. This is material that's been collected and organized to the best of my ability from all the teachers that I've had. But I do believe that this information is correct, it is accurate, and is historically found. So please enjoy this video.
Greetings, my name is Rob Stevens, and I'm the head instructor of the United States Ninpo Academy. Today's video is going to be a little bit interesting. I've been training in martial arts for a very long time, and I've been fortunate enough to have students move away and start their own lives and start their own schools, and I've even got students that have instructors now and they have their own schools. So I've been very fortunate to watch the people around me grow and be very successful. And I put out videos to help a lot of these students who live in different states and some live in different countries, and just try to help them continue to train when they can't make it to see me on a regular basis. But what I get a lot of times is people contacting me who are not really familiar with Ninpo and or ninjutsu in general. Maybe trained in other styles of martial arts, or have read some books. And the internet nowadays, this video is being made in early May of 2020. So the coronavirus is still pretty rampant, and the country's still shut down in most cases, and a lot of people are home, and a lot of people are spending a lot of time on the internet and watching too many videos. And there's a lot of videos out there that says that the Bujinkan, or the Takamatsu-Den, or the lineage of the Bujinkan, is a fraud, and that the Bujinkan is one of the biggest lies in all of ninjutsu. And there's people out there who've made tons of videos. There's people out there who write books and who are authors and researchers who also claim that the lineage of the Bujinkan only goes back less than 100 years, and in some cases only goes back until the 1950s and 1960s. Well, I've spent 35 years in this art, and I've been to Japan many times, and I've traveled around this world, and I've trained with most of the senior people that teach this art or represent this art. And I want to say up front that I'm not a PhD or historical researcher on Japanese culture or Japanese martial arts. I've spent enough time and I've spent enough money. I could probably have a couple PhDs if I wanted to. But the information that I rely on are the people that I've made connections with. And if the Bujinkan is a fraud, then there's some very successful people out there that are liars. And I'm going to say right now that there's no way that the Bujinkan material is 50, 60 years old. There's no way that Takamatsu Sensei, first of all, was that smart to invent all of this stuff. The history of the Bujinkan goes back hundreds and hundreds of years. Most of these systems started as early as 1049 AD and have continued to this very day. Ninjutsu is a system of secrets. The true shinobi warrior was a master of gathering information. And if he was caught, he was killed. A lot of the information that's been passed down throughout history has been done by word of mouth. Very little has been written down. And if it was written down, it was written down, learned, studied, mastered, tested, and then the records destroyed. And then the information was handed down again by word of mouth. So it's very obvious that these people who are digging through dusty books in Japan looking for proof are looking in the wrong places. I've sat in the dojo with many of these grandmasters, and I've watched them roll out scrolls, some of them hundreds of years old. I know they have the information. I know it has been passed down from grandmaster to grandmaster. And if anybody really wanted to research, all they have to do is go to Japan, invest some time, prove their loyalty, and this information will be shown to them. There's no secret within the Bujinkan or within any of the organizations that are the Takamatsu-Den. And when I say the Takamatsu-Den, for new people, the 33rd Grand Master of most of this information was a man named Takamatsu Sensei. And in 1972, he passed away. Prior to that, he awarded all of the scrolls and all of the knowledge to a guy named Dr. Masaki Hatsumi, who trained with him for over 15 years. 15 years, and Dr. Masaki Hatsumi was a bone doctor at the time, so he was a doctor. You've got to be pretty intelligent to do that. He was young. He was already a well-acclaimed martial artist. I think he was like a 5th-degree black belt in judo, trained in other styles of martial arts, and was looking for more. Met Takamatsu Sensei, became friends, became a student, and eventually became an apprentice. And over the course of 15 years, Takamatsu Sensei passed down all of the knowledge to him. From Dr. Masaki Hatsumi, 2 standout students, Shoto Tanimura, back in 1984, started the Genbukan, and then early 2000s, maybe 1999, Fumio Manaka Sensei, a senior student, started the Jininkan. So there's 3 organizations that represent the knowledge of Takamatsu Sensei. All 3 of these individuals are training from the same scrolls. They do things a little bit differently, but they're all from the same scrolls. And these scrolls are legitimate. These scrolls are real. These scrolls go back hundreds and hundreds of years. If you want proof of that, all you have to do is look at the techniques and look at the men who are teaching them. Dr. Masaki Hatsumi, again, was a doctor, was very intelligent, invested all of his life to this very day preserving this information. Shoto Tanimura Sensei was a police officer in Tokyo. He instructed martial arts to the police force in Tokyo. Shoto Tanimura Sensei, again, I have met, trained with, and was an instructor in his organization, is a very smart and wise guy. There's no way he would invest his entire life in a fraud or something that was fake. Fumio Manaka Sensei of the Jininkan was an officer in the Japanese military. He also has invested his entire life in this art. This is an officer in the Japanese military, also a very intelligent and wonderful martial artist. He would never waste his time in a system that was a fraud or a fake. Myself, I've been training 35 years, trained with all the different types of grandmasters in Japan, all the senior people around the United States, all the senior people around the world. I've trained in every single technique in all of the Takamatsu-Den scrolls that are available. No, I have not trained in Togakure-ryu or Gyokko-ryu, but I have trained in the rest, and I've seen every single technique by many different sources. There's no way that this information was derived, invented by one man. It has been handed down generation after generation, technique after technique. And I'm going to show you some information that I've collected over the years and give you some of the background and some of the history. Yes, I'm using history that's already been published, that's already been out there. But it's information that I've studied, and I believe in it. I've been through the techniques, and I know they're real. I know they have a historical connection. There's no doubt in my mind. There's no way that Takamatsu Sensei invented all of these techniques, all of these scrolls, and have passed them down to one person, and it's been a lie the entire time. Takamatsu Sensei's grandfather was Toda Sensei, who was the 32nd grandmaster of many of these martial arts. And if you go back and you look through the history, people like Momochi Sanryu, who was a very famous ninja from the day, or Shinobi-kai, was part of this lineage of the Bujinkan. Hattori Hanzo, another very famous ninja, was part of the Bujinkan heritage of the Iguru ninjutsu systems. In my records of looking around and studying this stuff, many of the grandmasters have told me that there were 70 different clans over the years that have studied in this style of Ninpo, family systems, over 70 different branches. Within the Bujinkan system, there's a handful of them that are still around. most of these ninjutsu systems have passed on, have died off. They're no longer being studied. They're no longer being trained in. Many people talk about the Iga-ryu and the Koka or the Koga-ryu, and the Koga-ryu and the Koto-ryu that is pretty much dead. That's been dead for many years. But the traditions of the Iga-ryu, however they are, have survived and are still alive today through the Bujinkan and the other Takamatsu-Den systems through Tanimura Sensei and Manaka Sensei. And now, it's a wonderful time, a lot of these heritage have been passed on to a new generation of grandmasters. And I'm going to have a list of that later on in the video. But the Bujinkan is a legitimate system. And for those who say that it's a new system or it's something that has been falsely created and Takamatsu Sensei invented all of this stuff and there's no records going back on that, you know, who's the greatest spy in the world? If we know who he is and we know his name, that's because he's dead or he's been caught. The greatest spies in the world have no name, have no history. And ninjutsu is a secret system, so it has no history. It's not in the record books. You can dig and you can dig and you can dig. It's not there. It was never meant to be there. It never will be there. It was something that was orally transmitted down. The only people that had this information were the grandmasters. And then the only other people were students of those grandmasters. That's how this information is passed down. It's not in a history book. It's not there. You're going to find glimpses here and there, but if you want the knowledge, you have to join the organizations, you have to dedicate yourself, you have to train, build a relationship with these grandmasters, and this information will be transcended to you. That's how you get it. That's how it's always been passed down. It's not in a history book, it's in a dojo. Thank you.
All right, so let's take a look at this here. This is a book that I've put together. It's the Book of Schools. I call it Tozando. I found that word. Tozando basically means a path or a trail that leads up a mountain quest. So I named that book Tozando. Found a picture that was pretty appropriate, but all that's beside. Let's take a look at some of the Ruhas connected to the Bujinkan. That's a picture of me and Hatsumi Sensei back in the 1990s in Taikai in the United States out of Baltimore, Maryland. There's a picture of me and Manaka Sensei, a seminar I hosted again in the Baltimore, Maryland area. And that's a picture of me and Tanimura Sensei at a seminar in Ireland. I guess that goes back to mid-2000s, somewhere around there. But let me scroll through some of the stuff and get to the first. And just know this book's not available for sale. This is something that the students will get once they're finished training and they reach their end of their training at 10th Dan. This book is ready for them. But here's some of the schools that we train in. I train in Togakure-ryu, Kukishinden-ryu, Takagi Yoshin-ryu, Gyokko-ryu, Koto-ryu, Gikan-ryu, Shinden Fudo-ryu Daken Taijutsu, Shinden Fudo-ryu Ju Taijutsu, Asayami Ichiden-ryu, Todo-ryu, and then I train in Kusarigama, and then Gikan-ryu. Manaka Sensei had created his own Tanto Jutsu system and his own Manriki Kusari. He has others, but those are the two that I kind of studied. That's a picture of me in Japan at the Iga Castle. That was probably somewhere in the, I don't know, mid-2000s, 2000, I don't know, it was 10, 15 years ago. So, but here's Togakure-ryu. And what this book is this is a collection of all the rules. Now, I've got notebooks filled, pages and pages and pages, and big binders filled. And what happened was, over the years, I would learn techniques from different teachers. I would, from my time in the different organizations, and then each organization has like a hierarchy of top Shihans and top foreign students that live in Japan. And I would go out of my way to barter and trade and pay for bar tabs and whatever I had to do to get information, private classes, to get these Ruha material. And it took a long time. I probably only had the system, all these systems complete for maybe the last 10 years. So I would say that it took about 25 years to gather all the techniques from all the different Ruhas. And every time I could attend a seminar somewhere, I used to definitely be on the travel bandwagon, and I used to fly and travel and drive everywhere.
Then, my life changed. Things came around. Different people came into my life. I had a family and children, and things naturally slow down as you get older and you get more responsibilities. But, during the 90s and early 2000s, I was traveling the world and spending a lot of money and meeting a lot of people. But that's what you had to do to get that information directly from word of mouth from somebody that I felt was a credible source. So eventually I had 6 or 7 techniques, versions of one kata. So I'd have 6 or 7 different ways that I've been shown one kata. And from teacher to teacher, from grandmaster to grandmaster, I don't care who you met, it was very rare that you've seen the technique done exactly the same way from 2 different sources. And, in the beginning days, I used to frustrate with that because I was trying to figure out who was right, who was doing it the right way, which way should I really focus on, which way should I really study. And I've kind of outgrown that, thank God, years ago. And now if I see a new version, it's just an extension. It's just another variation of what they call henka. It's just something that I can focus on, another point of view, maybe another aspect of the technique that I wasn't focusing on. And collectively, the more that you can see these techniques, you can kind of draw a common denominator. So what each of the teachers are doing, what was different, could be their way of expressing the technique. It could be different because of who they learned it from. It could be different because the way they trained in it and developed the katas themselves. But either way, I had all these different variations. And I had notebooks full. And I was trying to compile everything into one book. So when I traveled to teach seminars and I traveled to meet my instructors, I had everything at my fingertips. Now, of course, I have all this stuff digitally, and I have an iPad now that I can take everything around, and it's great. But back in the day when paper was still the best way to do it, I collaborated everything into a book. And rather than putting 6 and 7 or 10 different variations down for every single technique, which means that I would have tens of thousands of techniques written down, I decided to just kind of take the techniques that I had and look at the common denominators, look at the common thread, look at where the sources came from, looked at the technique name, looked at the meaning of the technique name, look at where it came in the scroll, and try to narrow down the best option. And in many cases, I combined options, a little bit from this person, a little bit from that person, to formulate a single kata that, in my opinion, from everything that I have seen, represents that technique the way that I want to teach it. So this is the history that a lot of it's come to me through word of mouth. A lot of this has come through my own research and my own studies, through things that have been published by grandmasters and by senior students. And I've put it together to try to get a good understanding of where this art and this history came from. And you can see for each one of these scrolls, this history is relatively expansive. And it has a lot of the information on here that goes down through the scrolls, through the years, through the histories, through the teachers. And it tells the story of this Ruha and showing the lineage of these systems, starting with Ike and Hogenbo Teshin, and goes on down into the Togakure-ryu and to the Ueno families and Iga families, all the way down to modern times, where it gets down into the Toda family, where it ends up ending with Takamatsu Sensei's grandfather, to Takamatsu Sensei, to Hatsumi Sensei himself, and then just recently in 2019, it was passed on to Takumi Tsutsui. So the Ruhas actually has been passed down. All of these Ruhas have been passed down away from Hatsumi Sensei's lineage. And if history tells anything, a lot of these new sokes are going to take some time, maybe a few years, to develop the techniques themselves as they represent it now, and to develop a core group of people around them that's going to be their Shihans within that Ruha, and start to develop the system there. So it's going to be an interesting time over the next 10 years watching all these different sokes develop the system. And some of the people that Hatsumi Sensei picked, they're not young guys. So it's quite possible in many of your lifetimes to see this information passed down 2 or 3 times. For Hatsumi Sensei to have been the soke for all of these years is normal in some ways, but very unnormal in others. So in our lifetime, there's a good chance that we're going to see 2 or 3 sokes
for each one of these ruhas, compared to being a situation where, since I've been training in 1985, Hatsumi Sensei has been the soke the entire time. But that's a list of the sokes, and you can see up here we've got some dates. He started in 1049, again coming over from China into the Waka Prefecture in Japan, and started training with some Chinese people that were living in the Iga Mountains that were warriors. And then the early roots started, and then it was kind of passed down and slowly organized. And you'll see a lot of the records really pick up around the 15th century going into the 16th century, where you start to see a little bit more accurate dates where everything was recorded. And again, a lot of this information is coming directly from the grandmasters, reading directly from the scrolls or published materials that they've published on the scrolls, producing these dates. This talks about the different aspects of Togakure-ryu, and it just goes on. So this is, the scroll of Togakure-ryu from what I was able to collect over my training. So it's pretty extensive, and it's, again, it took 25 years plus to gather all of this information for Togakure-ryu, and so there's no way, you can see this is pretty extensive stuff here, there's a lot of material in this scroll. This gets into the sword aspects of the Togakure-ryu. But this is Togakure-ryu, Next up is Kukishinden-ryu Daken Taijutsu. That's the family crest for Kukishinden-ryu. This is going down a list of sokes, starting in 1349 and then moving forward. And then you can see here how the 24th soke was Ishitani Sensei, who passed it down to Takamatsu Sensei, to Hatsumi Sensei, to now it's been passed down to Iwata Sensei, and I'll have to get his last name. And this here shows there is different branches of Kukishinden-ryu that are out there. A lot of times, like Kukishinden-ryu and Takagi Yoshin-ryu have different branches that are still alive outside of the branch of the Takamatsu side of it, where it's continued on in other branches. This is coming from the Takamatsu side of the systems. And you can see I've got pictures here of the different students and how the information was transferred down. And here's the history of Kukishinden-ryu, dating back to, again, the Wakayama Prefecture, 1318. And you're going to see a lot of this stuff comes from the same area. But here's the history of Kukishinden-ryu. Then it gets into the actual techniques of Kukishinden-ryu. And it goes through the entire scroll, different things that are connected to Kukishin family shrines of masters have died. There's their actual tombs. The Chuden Menkyo, Sabaki Kata, getting into the Okuden Menkyo. So, and there's a good picture there. That's actually a 2005. That's an actual picture of Takamatsu Sensei's grave. Unfortunately, that grave has been moved, and it's just been a sad story is what happens to that. And both Tanimura Sensei and Hatsumi Sensei have done their best to pay homage and build a permanent resting place for the memory of Takamatsu Sensei. It was actually turned into a parking garage. The whole cemetery area was owned by a gentleman who had a business building there and needed the space, and the cemetery had been there for a very long time. And it's just in Japan, so it's just been a crazy situation. But I was very fortunate to visit Takamatsu Sensei's grave a few times, and that's a picture there in 2005. And I don't believe that the grave lasted just but a few more years after that before it was removed and taken down. But this finishes out the training of Kukishinden-ryu. There's the poems that are in the scrolls that are connected to Kukishinden-ryu. And, Kukishinden-ryu is a very interesting system because it has a lot of the weapons that the Bujinkan uses. This is the sword aspects of Kukishinden-ryu. Again, another list there. Different people that were connected to the Kukishin family. And parts of the sword. And then this gets into the Kukishin Gikan, or the sword aspects. A lot of the Kihon, getting into the Shoden Menkyo stuff here. And then you can see some of the stuff I actually need some help with. So if anybody has those 3 techniques, I'm missing those. But Manaka Sensei said I could have them. Gets into the Hanbo. This is the 3-foot staff. This is all of the Hanbo Jitsu for Kukishinden-ryu. This gets into the scroll stuff of the Hanbo. Kukishinden-ryu Jo. That's a picture of the late Takamatsu Sensei, colorized. This is Kukishin Jo. A little bit longer staff. This is the Rishakubo. And this talks a little bit more about the history of Kukishinden-ryu. There's a picture of Takamatsu Sensei training with Hatsumi Sensei on the Kukishin Bojutsu. Bojutsu is a pretty long system. Between the Hanbo, the Jobo, and the Rishakubo, it's very extensive training. You could train years just on those katas there. There's the Okuden Menkyo, Kukishin. Then we get into the Yari, Kukishin Yari, and Kamais and all that stuff. Q level of the Yari. And then this gets into the Shoden 7 with the Yari here. Then the Naginata. The Q levels of the Naginata, Kukishin Naginata. Next is another big school. This is Takagi Yoshin-ryu. So Takagi Yoshin-ryu has been around for a long time. My information shows it started in 1625 and has been passed down currently now to a lot of different teachers. So there's a lot of people that train. And you can see from basically Ueno Takashi and Sato Kimbe and Takamatsu Sensei, there's been a lot of people connected to Takagi Yoshin-ryu. Takagi Yoshin-ryu, Hantai Yoshin-ryu, Yoshin-ryu, that branch of the Yoshin family, or Takagi Yoshin-ryu, has branched off a lot of different ways. And over the years, I've met people from these different branches, and some people are very secretive over their information, which I don't have a problem with. Other people openly shared information with me, and I was able to collaborate some of the information. But this is what I've been able to collect as far as what Takagi Yoshin-ryu is. Certain types of principles, the special things that make Takagi Yoshin-ryu what Takagi Yoshin-ryu is. This shows a little bit of a breakdown of how it went on, and we picked it up from this line over here through the Bujinkan. But this is more history information on Takagi Yoshin-ryu, and you can see most of the dates. 1635 is kind of where this system started up. And this is, again, the history of Takagi Yoshin-ryu. And unless I'm crazy, unless all these teachers have been lying to me, now this information is pretty accurate. This gets into the Kyushos of Takagi Yoshin-ryu, the specific spots, Kamais, Kens, and then it gets into the Shoden Menkyo. So this is all of Takagi Yoshin-ryu. Takagi Yoshin-ryu's got five chapters in it. It's a very good system. Takagi Yoshin-ryu. It's a jujitsu system. A lot of joint manipulation, throws, pins, grounds, different ways you lock the arms, legs, sitting in Seiza, Fudoza. There's a lot of different techniques. This one here is a Muto Dori section that shows if a person has a weapon, you have no weapons, how to defend yourself against that there. But Takagi Yoshin-ryu is one of the larger systems there. Next is Gyokko-ryu. So Gyokko-ryu here looks like it's got a history starting in 1156 and has been passed down. And you see right here where the Momochi Sanryu, the 14th Grandmaster, somewhere around the 1532s, and it stayed in the Momochi family. Then it went to the Toda family for a very long time, where what happens is a lot of times these Grandmasters would be awarded the title of Grandmaster, and they would change their name to Toda Sensei to honor their teacher. And that was very common. You see how this kind of happened. So it either stayed in the family, which was one aspect of it, or whoever was passed down to changed their name to honor their teacher. And you see that everything stayed that same way up until Takamatsu Sensei kind of broke tradition. And just recently I've added in here Tetsuji Ishizuka Sensei, who's the new Soke of Gyokko-ryu. He's a very talented instructor, and I think he's going to do a great job with the Ruha. Super excited to see what he does with it here. But this is the information that I have on Gyokko-ryu that I was able to collect. And it talks about how Cho-Gyokyo and Yo-Gyokyo left the war in China, arrived in Japan in around 1150, and then how this art has been translated and transcended down. Gyokko-ryu's got some chapters here. The rules of the school, certain prayers for the school, the hand postures for the school, kamai, different strikes, and kihon. Then we get into the actual technique, and then you can see, like for example here, like with Renyo, I've got a way that I'm trying to teach it, and then I've got notes. So this is what I'm still trying to narrow down different things, because I've seen things so many different ways, and these things are still very important, and I've kept it in there. So sometimes you'll see different variations. Other times, I'm pretty comfortable with something, and I only need one way of doing it. But you see, Gyokko-ryu is one of the staple systems of the Bujinkan and of all the other organizations. So I've seen it so many different ways. So I've still got a lot of variations that I'm trying to narrow down here. But as you see, once we get into the second scroll, Churaki no Maki, you see that was taught less. You go to a seminar, they start off with the Kihon, and they'll do the Shoden Menkyo, and you might get glimpses of some of the higher scrolls, but you really didn't see much. This is the material that took me a while. So you see, I was able to narrow that down, because in many cases, I either only had one way I've ever seen it, or I may have only had 2 or 3 different ways, because this information is a little bit more rare. So I don't have a lot of variations on some of the higher end scroll material. But you see, every once in a while, you get a teacher that'll do something over and over, and you get a couple of variations for it. Next is Koto-ryu. Koto-ryu is a Koppojutsu system. It's probably one of my favorite systems of the Ruhas that I study. Again, I've got some history here on it, saying that it started in the 14th century, and got some information here on the actual Ruha. And then the Soke list starting in 1532. And again, you have people like Momochi Sanryu, and you'll see a lot of similarities between Koto-ryu and Gyokko-ryu. A lot of these were very tight-knit systems. A lot of the same grandmasters had the scrolls to both systems and were passed down either independently or passed down together as a bundle, where one grandmaster, one person could be the grandmaster of a couple different Ruhas. But usually, as it gets down further down here, you can see it was passed on a little bit differently. Again, this was passed on from Todo Masamitsu, which was passed down. He was living from 1824 to 1908, passed down to Takamatsu Sensei. And you can see we've got some dates thrown in here and there that I was able to get. Today, this art is, again, in great hands with Noguchi Sensei. He's a Shihan of the Bujinkan, longtime student of Hatsumi Sensei, and I think he's going to do wonderful things with this Ruha as well. Super excited to see what he does with it. Then this gets into some of the Koto-ryu, the kens, or the strikes that are infamous with the scroll, and then we get into the Shoden Menkyo, and then it just kind of goes from there. Koto-ryu is not that big of a system. It's something you could probably learn within a year. It's called the Knocking Down Tiger School. Very famous picture. Then Gikan-ryu. Well, this is a super interesting Ruha here. As you see from the lineage here, it gets kind of crazy. Gikan-ryu is a system that's claimed to be the Grand Mastership of the Bujinkan as well as the Genbukan. And if you live strictly within the Genbukan world, if you're a Genbukan student, they don't talk much about
Hatsumi Sensei in the Genbukan. They don't talk much about Manaka Sensei or nothing. It's pretty much, if you're a Genbukan student, you would never know there was another Grandmaster alive. Everything's controlled by Grandmaster Shota Tanimura Sensei, and he does that for a lot of different reasons. One, people come and go all the time, and there's only a handful of people that stay with one organization for a lifetime, and it's very rare, especially nowadays, where people are going to go where the grass is greener. They're going to go where the money is. They're going to go where the knowledge is. There's a lot of personal things where sacrificing your entire life, like many of the Shihans, like Noguchi Sensei, Nagato Sensei, and Ishizuka Sensei, dedicated, were very loyal to Hatsumi Sensei his entire life. And now they've been rewarded Grand Masterships, which I think is very cool. And I also think it's very just and fair for a lifetime worth of dedication. And I believe that 100% that if Manaka Sensei and Tanimura Sensei would have shown that same type of loyalty, they would have been rewarded with soke ships at this point in time as well, and could have lived out what they wanted to do the whole time. Now, Tanimura Sensei has his own story of why he left the Bujinkan and his fate that led him to the development of the Genbukan, and it's a very interesting story. This is not the right format for that, and nor do I represent the Genbukan anymore, so it's not my place to tell the story, but I do believe that listening directly to Tanimura Sensei and seeing what he has on Gikan-ryu, I do believe there's something there. You see that my list shows that Takamatsu Sensei received it from Ishitani Sensei, passed it on to Akimoto Fumio, who only lived for a short period of time once he received the Grand Mastership. And the story that I got, that Akimoto Sensei passed it on to Sato Kinbei, as well as Takamatsu Sensei passing it down to Hatsumi Sensei at one point in time. When Akimoto Sensei passed away, I believe that the information went back to Takamatsu Sensei, the Grand Mastership, and then the Grand Mastership was passed to Hatsumi Sensei. But before Akimoto's death, I believe it was also passed down to Sato Kinbei, and Sato Kinbei kept a lot of that to himself. He was a very personal guy. And Sato Kinbei passed that information down to Tanimura Sensei. And then Hatsumi Sensei has now passed this information down to Sakasai Nori, who's just currently 2019 received the information of Gikan-ryu. I was told stories that Gikan-ryu was actually taken to a court, and the heritage and the lineage of the scrolls were presented. And the story that I got from the Genbukan is that Tanimura Sensei actually won that court ruling, that the inheritance of the Gikan-ryu material was correctly justified and proved to be in Tanimura Sensei's name. But I also believe that the material was passed down from Takamatsu Sensei to Hatsumi Sensei. So I believe that in a weird way, both of these gentlemen actually did receive this information. Now, all of us who's trained in the Bujinkan for years know that there's been very little Gikan-ryu material that's ever been taught, which is interesting. And the Genbukan students know that Gikan-ryu is a staple or a part of the Genbukan material, and Tanimura Sensei's son actually is Menkyo Kaiden holder and will be the next soke on the Genbukan line of Gikan-ryu. But I do have some history here of Gikan-ryu, and a lot of this comes from the Genbukan source, and it's a very interesting school. That's a picture of me and a student. Sean Sadowski is still in the Genbukan, training in Gikan-ryu in Japan. We were just training inside of a dojo there, and there was a break, and we went outside and we filmed some of the techniques we were just working on. That's a picture left over. So it's actually one of the Gikan-ryu kamais there. But this is the information on Gikan-ryu. I do have a list of grandmasters here. So you see this system started early on, the creators of Gikan-ryu, and then start getting some dates around 1558. So we look at this here, we're probably somewhere in the early 14th century, 15th century, where this material started, and stayed in a pretty much organized way, and went down to Ishitani to Takamatsu Sensei, and then again from there it kind of gets scrambled around. And I guess it's whoever you believe, but I do believe that Takamatsu passed it to Akimoto Sensei, to Sato Kimbe to Tanimura, and I also believe that when Akimoto died, the information went back to Takamatsu Sensei, and then Takamatsu Sensei passed it on to Hatsumi Sensei, not knowing about the Sato Kimbe transformation, and that's kind of where things got kind of weirded out. But either way, I believe that they both have copies of the scrolls and the material, but as far as the history and the training, right now, I believe that the Genbukan are the only people that are actually doing the Densho of here. So this shows the kamais, shows the techniques of Gikan-ryu, and this is the actual Shoden Menkyo of the Gikan-ryu. These are the techniques, the names, and the meanings. And in my time with Tanimura Sensei, the Shoden Menkyo was all I was able to get. But I believe that Tanimura Sensei has the entire scroll. Next is Shinden Fudo-ryu. Shinden Fudo-ryu is the immovable heart school. Looks like it started in 1113. You'll see some of the same names that started with Togakure-ryu. These are the early people that invented Ninpo or ninjutsu in itself. And from their early days, a lot of different branches and systems started from these individuals. But you'll start seeing some of these dates here in 1113. And then these are the inventors of just Ninpo or ninjutsu in general. And then from that training, they started training in different aspects and developing what we know today as Ninpo. It started to be specialized, organized, categorized differently. And that's why these different names started. So I believe that probably around 1113 is when this art of Shinden Fudo-ryu was probably organized. And then it's been passed down. You see getting into some of the more of the modern times where it was passed down to Toyota, to Toda Sensei, to Takamatsu Sensei, to Hatsumi Sensei, and has now been passed on to Nagato Sensei, again, a very senior student in the Bujinkan, lifelong student of Hatsumi Sensei. So Shinden Fudo is in very, very good hands, and it fits Nagato Sensei's personality and the way he trains very well. So he's going to do a great pick, great job with that. Here's some of the rules that were written about this system, the 1891 by Toda Sensei. These are things that he felt was important to train and understand. And then I've got the history of Shinden Fudo-ryu, and going back to the founders who created the first studies. Again, you'll see a lot of these people had some Chinese backgrounds, some Korean backgrounds. Talks about how they fled to Iga, and then Shinden Fudo-ryu was the principle of nature, and then different systems that were connected to Kukishinden-ryu. A lot of these Ruhas have connections to other systems, and the names have changed. It says here that its original name was Kijin Fudo-ryu, and was eventually changed to Shinden Fudo-ryu with different grandmasters. So things have changed over time. And again, I've got a little bit of the history on this one here. Then we go into the actual scroll, and you can see with Shinden Fudo-ryu, interesting thing, they actually have 3 techniques, that are in the scroll. So technique Fubi here has the original technique, and then there's 2 Henka or 2 scroll variations that are in there. So these are not made up variations, these are actually part of the scroll. So you'll see that every single technique has these actual second variations. So some of them are just the left side, which is the Hidariwaza. So you've got the main technique, then you do the main technique to the left side, and then you may have some kind of variation on it. This is the second section of it. It's kind of interesting that I have a picture here of the successor with training with Hatsumi Sensei. Getting to the third scroll, you see that it continues with the 2 different variations in the third scroll. So the Shinden Fudo-ryu, Daken Taijutsu, again, not that big of a system, but it has a counterpart to it, Shinden Fudo-ryu Ju Taijutsu. So Shinden Fudo-ryu has basically 2 branches. One is a Daken Taijutsu, which is going to be more of like striking, punching, kicking, throwing, different feeling. This one here is what they call a Ju Taijutsu. Not so much a Jujutsu, but a Ju Taijutsu. Very similar, but this is going to have a lot more of the arm locks, not so much based on the Daken Taijutsu, which is going to be striking into the muscles, striking into the body, picking the body up, throwing the body down to the ground, where the ground is actually causing the damage to the body. It basically deals with a concussion to the body and hurting the muscle tissue of it. Where the Ju Taijutsu is going to be working a little bit more on the Jujutsu principles, where you're still going to get a lot of the Daken Taijutsu aspect, but it's going to continue on with locking up the joints, breaking of the joints, throwing people down by using the manipulation of the bones and the joints rather than focusing strictly on the striking. So that's the difference between Shinden Fudo-ryu Daken Taijutsu and Shinden Fudo-ryu Ju Taijutsu. But here's the Shoden level of the Ju Taijutsu. There's actually a picture of Toda Sensei, who lived from 1884 to 1909. Chuden Menkyo here, Okuden Menkyo. And again, not that big of a system, something you can learn in a year or two, if somebody will actually teach it to you. Here's a good variation. You see how I've got the actual technique, then I've got all these different variations that I'm still working on. Good knowledge in there, you know what I mean? So it's good to have variation sometimes, and sometimes it confuses students. So for somebody like myself, I've got these variations, it's great. But if you're just learning it, I've learned over the years that people just want to see it one way. If you show them 5 or 6 different ways, it confuses the hell out of them. They want to start somewhere and have something to work with. And if you show one technique 6 or 7 different ways, which to me, I feel like I'm giving them a gift, to them, it's a burden in a beginning student. So my advice is, if you're going to teach people in the Ruhas, show them that one variation that you're comfortable with, that you want to pass down to that student, and let them learn it, let them master it. And then if that student comes back and has the desire to learn more about that Ruha or about that technique, then you've got this information you can share with them. So these variations, these henkas, these kudens, don't throw them away really quickly to new students. In many cases, they're learning the core technique, and they need to focus on that. And if you give them too much information, it just blows their mind and confuses them. So just some kuden or some advice on that there. Next is Aseami Ichiden-ryu. Aseami Ichiden-ryu, again, I know for a fact was definitely something that was taught in the early days, but is gone away. It's something that the Genbukan focuses on, and it's something that I had trained in. Again, Aseami Ichiden-ryu starting in 1566. And this is another system that's branched out in a lot of different ways here. I don't think I have a soke list for this one here, but I'm sure I can get one. This is the Shoden Menkyo, getting into the Chuden Gata and the Okuden Gata. And from my understanding that Aseami Ichiden-ryu is still being taught today, and there's other different main lines, and it's a lot larger. I have a book that was written years ago that has probably twice the amount of information that I have listed here. On the Okuden, I only have 12 techniques. The Chuden, I have 12 techniques, and I believe on the Shoden Menkyo, I have 12 techniques. So that really breaks down to 3 things, is 36 katas. I believe that Aseami Ichiden-ryu probably has 100 katas, and there's many different chapters in there. So I believe that what Tanimura Sensei was teaching is either, number one, he's only sharing a certain percentage with the organization or the students, and he's keeping some of that kind of separate for the grandmasters or higher level, whoever he picks. I don't know if he's an actual soke of Aseami Ichiden-ryu or if he's just a Menkyo Kaiden holder. I believe he's just a Menkyo Kaiden holder of Aseami Ichiden-ryu. But I have at least the percentage of it, and I have a book or a manuscript that has the whole entire system or more information on this Ruha. But these are the 12 techniques of each sections that I've learned, that I've studied, that I've, I'm not going to say I perfected, but I've got a good understanding of them. This is the history that I've got. This is the book that I teach from. This particular book right here is 230 some pages of Ruha material, and shows a little bit about the Bujinkan, the history, and the legitimacy of these systems. If somebody wants to say that all the material that I've just shown you is relatively new,
it's 100 years old or 50 years old, or Takamatsu Sensei was so intelligent that he was able to create all of this stuff, or he took this from history and this from history, and it has no historical essence. I showed you this stuff. And you've got to really just understand that the Grand Masters are the people that's giving me this information. So this information is not just something I've made up or I've stole from this guy or that guy. This information has been passed down to me by my diligence and training and getting out there in the world and meeting different teachers and meeting different grandmasters and asking the right questions and proving my loyalty to them to be able to get the information. I believe that these names are accurate. I believe that these names are connected to these scrolls. I believe that these names are connected to Takamatsu Sensei. That's how it's been handed down. And if you train in all of these different techniques like I have, and you go through all of these different techniques, and you see technique after technique after technique after technique from all these different ruhas, you'll start to understand that there is some serious history and battlefield-proven techniques that's been passed down from generation to generation to generation. So if people are out there saying that the Bujinkan is a fraud, that the material is a fraud, that the Hatsumi Sensei is a fraud, that this is not real ninjutsu, that it has no historical presence or historical essence, they need to come and talk to me. They need to come and get on my mats. They need to show me what they've done with their 30 years of training or however long they've been training. And they need to tell me that this stuff is a fraud and I've wasted my time. I've wasted my entire life. Not only have I wasted my life, that great people around this world, very intelligent people. There's people that are in the Bujinkan that have dedicated and done the research, like Sensei Zukari Kasim, I believe his name is. He's a very intelligent guy. There's Iran Roy of the Genbukan, who's a scholar and teaches at a university in Japan that has studied these materials. And if you go to nimpo.org, you can see some of the historical records that he's translated. So I'm not taking a shot at anybody out there. There's people that's made a lot of claims about the Bujinkan. And to be honest, at this point in my life, I don't care what they're saying. If they put the time into the dojo and put the time into meeting these grandmasters and seeing these scrolls, trained in these scrolls, and learned all this material, they wouldn't be saying the things that they're saying. And if they're saying these things about the Bujinkan and about the Takamatsu-Den and about Nimpo and about ninjutsu, and you're a new student out there, please look over this video over and over and over. I've shown you that this material exists. I've shown you that it has legitimacy to history. I've shown you the names of the people that's passed it all down. And unless you think that I'm a liar and every one of my teachers has been a liar and this has been a total fraud, I don't see how you can justify this. And if you're saying, well, prove it, go to these universities and go to these places that are keeping the documents of the samurai, and you can see how the samurai history has been put down step by step by step by step by step. And there's very little to no reference of any of these systems. There's no reference of Togakure-ryu. There's no reference of these names. There's no reference to Koto-ryu and Gyokko-ryu. All of these things only came from Takamatsu Sensei, and he organized this thing. They're crazy. They're out of their mind. This information is legit. This information is accurate. This information is historical. It's been passed down for hundreds of years. It's changed my life. It's helped a lot of people that I've known. It's changed their lives. If you're interested in a traditional martial arts system that has historical presence, then the Bujinkan and the Takamatsu-Den and all these other organizations I'm talking about, you can't go wrong. But you've got to do the work. And there's a lot of schools out there that are part of the Bujinkan and part of the Takamatsu-Den that just don't do the work. They don't do the research. They don't do the study. But if you train with people like I've done, like Daishian Philogare, who's dedicated his entire life, and many of the other teachers that I've had, you're going to see that they're very intelligent, well-versed, well-educated people. They're not stupid, and they wouldn't let something mislead them their entire lives. At some point in time during my training, if I hadn't seen the scrolls rolled out, met the different Japanese teachers, seen their lives, heard their stories, seen them train, feel the techniques, feel the accuracy of these techniques, see the battle-proven results on the mats, then yeah, man, I would have, and I did question a lot of this back in the day. When I first came over, I came from Wing Chun Kung Fu, which was a whole mess right there because there's a modified system, traditional system. This grandmaster's right, this grandmaster's right. And man, you got people complaining about the politics, and there's politics in every martial art. But when I felt the results of these techniques, I knew in my heart that it was a real, legitimate martial arts system. And I've dedicated my life to it. And if somebody wants to tell me that that's been in vain, and all of my teachers have been a liar, and this entire organization, all of this is just a fraud, you got to be out of your damn mind. Period. My name's Rob Stevens. It's United States Ninpo Academy. You want to train? I don't care what your background is. I don't care where you trained before. I don't care who your teacher is. If you want knowledge, I'll give you access to knowledge. If you want to train, I've got places for you to train. You want curriculums? I've got curriculums that you can start to study with. If you don't want to train with me and you just want recommendations for people that you can train with, I can narrow down some of the people out there that's, not as accredited as it need to be, haven't done the homework. There's a lot of people out there in this organization that just don't do the work. I know plenty that have done the work, that are still doing the work, that I can put you in connection with. I hope this helps you understand a little bit about the Takamatsu-Den and about the Bujinkan.
Okay, let's try to wrap this video up. The purpose of the video was not to justify myself in any way. This video was designed to show people that the Bujinkan is a very legitimate organization, and that Takamatsu Sensei has ties to history that go back hundreds of years. This information has been passed down from grandmaster to grandmaster, and it's currently in the year 2019 has been passed down again to new grandmasters. So the information within Takamatsu-Den is now going to be the Hatsumi Sensei Den. It's going to be passed down throughout history. This art is going to stay alive, and the people that train in it have no doubt of the validity of this material. Those who search through history books, don't bother them. Don't even pay attention to them. If they talk about how the Bujinkan is a fraud or it's a fake and it has no ties to history, just understand that if you visit Japan and you spend some time and you train in it, you will understand that this material is very accurate and very legitimate and very historical. It goes all the way back almost 1,000 years to the very beginning of how this art started, coming from many other countries to Japan, to the Iga Mountains, and was organized into ninjutsu, into Ninpo, a tie of a physical realm and a spiritual realm. So if people are saying that this art is a fraud and there's no legitimacy, there is. And if you want to believe them, go ahead. If you want to understand the truth about these systems, all you have to do is visit Japan, train with these grandmasters, and you will see that this material is very accurate, very effective, and very historical. I hope you enjoyed the video, and I hope this helps you understand that the legitimacy of the Bujinkan is something to take very seriously. There's many schools out there in all kind of different systems and all kind of different organizations. It's those individuals that apply themselves that make the material work. So if you see videos out there of people from different styles of martial arts and they claim to be Bujinkan people, please stick to the people that train directly with Hatsumi Sensei and with these new grandmasters in Japan. That's where the true knowledge is. This is the Japanese system. The knowledge comes from Japan. The Japanese grandmasters hold the scrolls, and that's where the knowledge is. Can you learn this material in the country that you live in? Do you have to visit Japan? Nowadays, you do not. But if you're very serious and you have questions about the validity, you're going to have to do what I did and a lot of other people did. You're going to have to get on a plane, you're going to have to go there, and you're going to have to train. And it's going to take some time, and it's not going to be easy, but nothing good is. The Bujinkan is a very excellent organization. The material in the Takamatsu-Den scrolls, which is now, I'm going to be the first to clone it, to be the Hatsumi Sensei Den, has now passed on. And this material is alive, and there's some great grandmasters that have this material, and I'm very excited to see what they do with it. But again, my name is Rob Stevens. I'm the head instructor with the United States Ninpo Academy, and I'm here to help. If you want to learn this art and you've got questions, you know how to reach me.